People complain about kids running around the ship, which is interesting. This is my 18th cruise, and I've been on a lot where I've barely seen children, and I've been on a couple where there are a lot of children, and it's a little obnoxious. We record these podcasts live on the ships whenever we can, and so you might hear stomping down the hallways or kids shouting or playing that the microphone might pick up, despite our best efforts. And it's really minor. I don't find it to be a problem for the most part. I was on the Carnival Legend, and I saw a kid grab an unattended beer and pour it into the Lido pool. And so that particular child and the parents that were not very attentive, I kind of took exception with. But other than that one very rare occurrence, that's one thing that's happened in 18 sailings. I find that, it's a family environment, and that's not the worst thing. If it encourages people to, use better language or behave themselves slightly more because there are younger people around, I don't see that as a drawback personally, but that's partly just because I'm not a fan of that kind of stuff as much. But one of the questions or complaints that people say is like, oh, these kids running around, they got to be stopped. So let's take that complaint seriously. Let's think it through. Okay, they need to be stopped. Who's going to stop them? Of course, you want, if they're misbehaving, you would hope that the parents, through good parenting, would teach their children, the appropriate manners and behaviors, polite society would expect. But let's say that the child is, not supervised at the moment for whatever reason. Who's going to stop them if not the parents? Because it's not like you can complain to Carnival to get them to do something about the parents, because how are you even going to figure out who they are on your own? Are you expecting your cabin steward, if they hear or see someone running down the hallways, to go chase them and physically stop them? Do we want these adult employees to be like physically grabbing and stopping children from running around? Is that part of their job as a cabin steward? I wouldn't think so. And they could say like, oh, slow down, please. And that's fine. And I have heard some do that, particularly on Lido deck. Bar service people see kids running around, and it's, it's near the pool, and they say, please don't run or whatever. And so I think that's appropriate. But if we're talking about enforcing a rule that's being violated, that sounds like it's a job for security. And so it's a question of what is the role of security on the ship? And so if you want children to never be running around or being loud, then you're going to need a lot more security than they have currently. And that comes with a cost. And so that's going to drive up the cost of the cruise, ultimately, because it has to get paid by someone. It's going to be the guests, because that's how a business operates. So do you want security on every deck watching just to stop children from running around? That doesn't make sense. If they see children running around, are they supposed to grab them? How are they supposed to figure out the cabin that they're in? There's a lot of logistical problems here. And so let me just ask you this question. What if they're already doing it? What if security's already intervening and stopping the children when they see them from doing inappropriate things, when they're not tasked with something, more serious? If they're breaking up a fight and a kid goes running by, I don't think there's anyone on the planet that's not in that fight that's going to want security to let the fight continue to go stop the kid from running. That doesn't make any sense. So nobody's asking for something like that. And so if there's kids running around, security sees it, and they're not tied up on another task, then I've seen them intervene. I've seen it happen. It doesn't happen often. Partly because Carnival, I think, does a very good job of being discreet about these things. When Tova had misplaced a ring and they were doing a cabin search, security was very discreet about it. They didn't make a big deal about it in the hallway so that all the neighbors knew what was going on. Part of it's probably to preserve our dignity as much as, not interfere with other guests, not cause a scene, and that sort of stuff. And so by and large, I find they do a very good job. I think I was on the Carnival Glory, and I was up on the upper deck, and I saw some kids climbing the sort of speaker awning system. Near where they would do the dive-in movies. And so there were, I say kids, I think they were young teenagers, and they were climbing all over it, and security was on them within like 90 seconds they were there. And like security's down on Lido, so they had to like come forward a section on the ship and get up a few decks to get to where they were and then get them down. And so they took them, they took them out of sight, sort of behind a staircase, so they could talk to them without embarrassing them, which I thought was a classy thing to do. They made them all hand over their sign and sail cards. They were taking notes. I obviously wasn't involved, so I didn't intervene beyond kind of observing what was going on around me. But it seemed like they were doing what you would expect security to do. So just because you may have encountered a few rambunctious or misbehaving kids doesn't mean that Carnival doesn't care, that security's not doing anything about it. And I gotta ask, you people who complain about it on Facebook, did you tell anyone at Carnival when they had an opportunity to do something about it? You know, if you see kids, I don't know, climbing something they shouldn't, running around where they shouldn't be, do you go up to security or a guest services person or something, you know, and say something? You can grab any shipboard phone and call 911 for a true emergency. Kids running around is not that. But you could also grab any shipboard phone and call guest services. On the vast majority of Carnival ships, the guest services number is 7777. Pretty easy to remember. Lucky 7. Just keep dialing it until you hear something. And so if you're truly concerned about this, be part of the solution. Take proactive action. Call guest services or find a staff member. And I mean, I don't know that a bar server is going to be the right person. You're going to want to find security or someone who themselves has a radio or a phone. And if you really think that it needs intervention, then you could politely bring it up that way, rather than waiting until you're back on shore and complaining on a Facebook group. And then it suddenly becomes this hostile flame war of parents versus, you know, single people or some version therein where people get drawn into their camps and it becomes non-productive. And so, you know, that's my advice is if it's frustrating you, there's energy there. And so use that energy for something productive to make it better, be the change that you want to see. And, you know, don't necessarily be, you know, passive aggressive or aggressive confrontational about it. Just be polite, respectful, and make your concerns known. And then you can see what happens. And, you know, if security is unable to respond, it might be because there's something more serious going on. When Sam and I, a year ago last November, were on the Carnival Breeze, we had a chance to talk to Mike Pack at a Q&A session and a meet and mingle. And one of our questions was, like, how often is the brig used? And he says, you know, on pretty much every ship, there's pretty much always someone in the brig for something. And that surprised us, and it surprises a lot of the people that we tell, because you don't see it really happening. You know, you hear about these crazy brawls that somebody might catch and put up on YouTube, and you might hear or see the odd thing here or there, but they do a pretty good job of keeping it quiet, and that's actually a good thing. It preserves the dignity of the people who are not having the best moment of their lives in all likelihood, be they an instigator or a victim or whatever. Let's preserve their dignity until we know more about what happened, and it doesn't interfere with everybody else having a good time. So I think that Carnival Security, generally speaking, does a great job. Could they do better? Probably. But because so much of it happens out of sight, and that's a good thing, it's difficult for us to judge. And so I think that it's, you know, let's stay level-headed about it. Because, you know, getting super upset about a vacation is something that I think needs a very serious transgression. Despite my spa rant video and the odd thing here and there that's been a problem for us, like ants in our hotel room in Tampa, the Hilton Garden Inn, by and large, I think, try to see the positive. That's a big part of our message at Vacation Impossible. Do you agree with that stuff I was just saying? Let us know in the comments below, and give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more of this kind of content.